of the Furious. So let's talk about this thing right now, okay? So the Fast and Furious franchise has been a very interesting type of franchise to kind of talk about for the most part, right? Because to me, and if you're a gamer, you might get this reference, but it's kind of like Saints Row. I like to kind of compare it to Saints Row. Saints Row kind of started out as like a GTA thing, you know, gangsters on the streets, whatever, but eventually they became kind of like celebrities, and then they became the president, and obviously they started fighting aliens. Fast and Furious, street racing. Then it became apparently, fugitives. Then it became fucking bank robbers. Then it became secret agents. Now they're becoming James Bond, the team of sorts, or the Avengers. That's basically what the Fast and Furious is. And I gotta be honest, I kind of love it exactly for it. Now, look, there are gonna be people kind of complaining about this franchise. And I heard people already kind of complaining about, this franchise is kind of dead, ride or die, just die. And I can tell you this right now, they're not really gonna be dying anytime soon. And it looks like they're gonna be pretty much riding for at least two more other films. So let's talk about the fate of the Furious. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it running out of fumes that need to be stopped right now? Here's the thing about the Fate of the Furious. It's actually pretty fucking awesome. I think the same way John Woo pretty much did like badass gung fu action, I think that's pretty much what the Fate of the Furious does when it comes to just simply put car, mayhem and just overall some very insane type of stunts. At this point in time, you can't really complain about the Fast and Furious. Either you like them or you don't like them. You could pay the ticket, you could not pay for a ticket, but at the end of the day, it's your decision, right? Just to begin with. Now, overall, this is the first movie, obviously, without Paul Walker completely. And yes, it does kind of feel like it's a little bit of a missing piece for the most part. But I definitely think that the movie is very fully aware that the Brian character is obviously still there. And that's actually great. At least in my perspective, I think they actually do a good enough job at making it still feel like, yeah, he's still there, obviously in spirit in some sort of way. But that's basically what it is. Now, when it comes to the Fate of the Furious, is it good when it comes to some of the story beats? Now, obviously, we don't go into the Fate of the Furious for story. No one does. That's just a simple case. But I think the story of the Dom part when he's kind of leaving the family, that's actually kind of an interesting thing. They actually carried it out in a very interesting and actually deeper way. Honestly, a lot more deeper than I expected this kind of very half-assed screenplay to kind of actually deliver. And I think it actually goes pretty well inside of the character. And you understand a little bit his motivations a little bit more for the most part. Now, my biggest problem when it comes to the plot is not necessarily the Dom part, even though that is dragged out a little bit too long, and I feel like they could have actually picked up the pace a little bit. My problem is a little bit on Charlize's part. When it comes to Charlize's kind of cyber attack thing or whatever the hell her thing was, I just felt like that was kind of just a half-assed thing. It really didn't do anything for me, and I kind of actually was a little bit bored. Now, Charlize, don't get me wrong, she a bad bitch, she's actually pretty good in the movie, and I actually think she actually does a really good job at, even though she looked like Shondi from Saints Row 2 with her, dreads, I think she actually does a really good job, and she actually does a pretty grounded, villain approach for the most part, in a pretty over-the-top and kind of silly movie. Now, when it comes to the theme of family in these Fast and Furious movies, obviously they've been going on for quite some time. Honestly, that's a little bit of the negative when it comes also to this movie. It's just that I love the theme of family, but you gotta be honest. We've been talking about the theme of family for so much, it almost starts to kind of feel like it's getting a little bit too forced. Now, when it comes to Dom actually leaving, as I said before, I thought that was actually really good because I understood why they did it, because Dom is essentially that family member that kind of gathers everybody around the table for Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever. They're essentially kind of the core piece of the family. But if that core piece kind of leaves or goes their separate ways or have a falling out, you essentially kind of go your separate way also, and the family kind of separates itself. And that's kind of a sad thing to see just to begin with. But so I understood why they kind of kept most of the team separate from each other on some of the occasions. Unfortunately, I think that the film kind of suffers from that just to begin with, in my perspective. Now, when it comes to the cast, obviously everybody talks about a diverse cast, cool characters, whatever. Now, as I said, the plot is not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, but it's actually kind of interesting to see how Dom's secret, not necessarily Charlize Theron's James Bond type of, plot for the most part. The characters are always kind of fun to see. The plot isn't great, the characters are fun. That's pretty much the basis you can pretty much throw out there. When it comes to The Rock and Jason Statham, they are the best parts of this movie by far. Now, like I said, the writing is fantastic. Honestly, there's a couple lines in this movie that kind of makes me be like, that is the dumbest fucking thing I have ever heard. But you carry it out so awesome that I think that's going to be actually kind of cool. That's pretty much the logistics of the Fast and the Furious. Honestly, they have an action scene in here. And the action is obviously over the top and kind of crazy, whatever it may be. Because this is the logistics of the Fate of the Furious. It's so fucking insane and kind of crazy, whatever it may be, that you don't necessarily even have any sort of, negativity to how ridiculous it kind of gets. Because honestly, if somebody be like, Fate of the Furious, they just fucking jumped the goddamn submarine. So, meanwhile, water is wet. It just kind of seemed like the logistics of it. Everybody comes game to play. It does feel like sometimes the movie does seem like most of the actors kind of going through the motions. If you're saying Scott Eastwood is going to be the next Paul Walker, guess what? It's not. Paul is obviously a big part of this franchise. And Scott Eastwood can barely even, line up to like Clint Eastwood's shadow. But, that's not a bad thing. Not many people can. Some people have tried, but, a lot of people have failed just to begin with. Kurt Russell is still there and he's great. There's a lot of exposition inside of the movie. And that's all good and dandy because, like I said, it sometimes it can serve a purpose. The action scenes are over the top. If you thought New York traffic, I'm just going to say this right now. There's a scene in New York, obviously, right? And that was actually kind of cool to see. But there's a scene in New York, and if you thought New York traffic was bad, this movie just makes it look like Carmageddon. That's how fucking ridiculous it actually is. And I thought that was actually pretty insane. The finale finishes up well. The theme of family's there. And yes, this movie does feel like, it does kind of just feels like, there's not that many places where to go. Helen Mirren's nice, that's great, that's cool. Everything's there, it's fun, it's enjoyable, and it's completely fucking batshit insane. Look, I can tell you this right now. Fast and Furious films in a whole different places. Fast and Furious got a big, diverse cast, but there's 2 languages, right? They go to all these countries, whatever it may be, but there are 2 specific languages that the Fast and Furious do not speak, and that is logistics and fucking common sense. That's basically what you can pretty much say. But yes, like I said, if you're going to enjoy it, great. It's not the best one out of, the recent ones. Honestly, if I'm being honest, I think this shit is actually kind of the weakest one since, the weakest one of this, like, new franchise since 5 started it. But that's just my thought. But overall, like I said, Fast and the Furious 8, or Fate of the Furious, is a very welcome, over-the-top film that sometimes feel like it does drag a little bit when it comes to the Dom stuff and suffers from some of the family being separate, but it serves a purpose in the story. If you're asking for great writing, you might as well just be, moving on and just fucking push forward because this franchise ain't holding nothing back. Tyrese and everybody else, Michelle Rodriguez, that's there, the honeymoon, whatever. Everything's great and all the characters actually work decent enough well, and everybody has their moments to shine, especially towards the end, and it leaves you wanting more for what is next to come for the next 2 sequels, which should be very, very interesting. But also, I thought Helen Mirren was kind of nice to see. That's pretty much about all you can really say. But comment, subscribe, and like. I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.